from failure to success. A personal journey. I never thought I'd see her again. Mrs. Henderson, the woman who single-handedly tried to destroy my future before it even began. Yet here she stands, fidgeting with her purse straps, scanning the menu board above my head with that same condescending squint I remember from sophomore chemistry class. She hasn't recognized me yet, but I know her immediately. Some faces you never forget, especially when they belong to the person who told you that you'd never amount to anything. The irony isn't lost on me. She's standing in line at Roasted Dreams, the coffee shop I built from nothing. My coffee shop. The one that started as a desperate attempt to pay rent and somehow evolved into the most successful independent cafe in downtown Portland. She's studying the specialty drink menu, probably calculating whether she can afford the artisanal prices, while I stand behind the counter wearing an apron that bears my name embroidered in gold thread. Sarah Chen, owner. I should feel triumphant. This is the moment every underdog dreams of, right? The sweet taste of vindication. But instead, I feel something more complex, more layered. I feel the weight of every struggle that brought me here, every sleepless night, every moment of self-doubt that she planted in my 17-year-old mind, like a poison seed. Welcome to Roasted Dreams, I say, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. What can I get started for you today? She looks up from the menu, and for a split second, I see confusion flicker across her features. Then recognition dawns, and her face goes through a series of expressions so rapid it's almost comical. Surprise, disbelief, and something that might be shame, though I could be projecting that last one. Sarah, she says, and my name comes out like a question, as if she's not entirely sure I'm real. Sarah Chen? That's me, I reply, forcing a smile that feels foreign on my face. It's been what, 15 years? She stares at me, then at the bustling cafe around us, then back at me. I can practically see the wheels turning in her head, trying to reconcile the girl she failed with the woman standing before her. The girl she told would never understand complex concepts. The girl she claimed lacked the analytical thinking necessary for success in any meaningful career. The girl she failed not because of poor performance, but because she believed I didn't belong in her advanced placement classes. You own this place? She asks, her voice barely above a whisper. Built it from the ground up, I say, and there's pride in my voice now, real and unshakable. Started with a food truck, actually. Worked my way up. The line behind her is growing longer, and I can see my employees glancing over, probably wondering why I'm taking so long with one customer. But I can't seem to move this conversation along. There's something cathartic about this moment. Something I didn't know I needed until it was happening. Mrs. Henderson shifts uncomfortably, and I notice she's aged more than I expected. Her hair is completely gray now, pulled back in the same severe bun she wore when I was 16. But her eyes look tired, almost defeated. It occurs to me that she's probably retired, living on a fixed income, which would explain why she's calculating the cost of a simple latte. I'll have a small coffee, she says finally. Just regular coffee. Black. Our house blend is excellent, I tell her, moving to the brewing station. We roast our own beans, single origin from a farm in Colombia that practices sustainable agriculture. As I pour her coffee, I find myself talking, words spilling out like water from a broken dam. I actually studied chemistry in college, you know. Turned out I had quite an aptitude for it, especially when it came to understanding the chemical processes involved in coffee roasting and brewing. Who would have thought? She accepts the cup with shaking hands, and I notice she's not looking directly at me anymore. Sarah, She starts, then stops. How much do I owe you? It's on the house, I say. And I mean it. This moment is worth far more than the cost of a cup of coffee. She fumbles in her purse anyway, pulling out a crumpled $5 bill. Please, I insist. I take the money and ring it up, making sure to give her change. As I hand it back, our fingers brush briefly, and I'm struck by how small her hands are. How small she seems overall. This woman who loomed so large in my nightmares, who represented everything I thought I couldn't overcome, is just a person. A tired, aging person who probably doesn't even remember the specific cruelties she inflicted on a scared teenager. Mrs. Henderson, I say as she turns to leave. She freezes, her shoulders tensing. I want you to know that I don't hold any grudges. What happened in high school? It actually motivated me to prove that I could succeed, despite what you believed about me. She turns back, and there are tears in her eyes now. Sarah, I need to apologize. I was wrong about you. I was wrong about a lot of things back then. We all were, I say. And I realize I mean it. I was wrong about myself, too. I let what you said define me for longer than I should have. She nods, still clutching her coffee cup like a lifeline. This place is beautiful. You should be proud. I am, I say simply. After she leaves, I stand there for a moment, processing what just happened. My assistant manager, Marcus, approaches with a concerned expression. Everything okay, boss? He asks. You look like you've seen a ghost. Something like that, I say, watching through the window as Mrs. Henderson walks slowly down the street, her coffee cup still steaming in the cool morning air. The truth is, I have seen a ghost. The ghost of who I used to be, the girl who believed she was destined for failure because one person told her she wasn't good enough. But I've also seen something else in this moment. I've seen how far I've come, not just in terms of material success, but in terms of understanding myself and my own worth. Roasted Dreams wasn't born from a desire for revenge or a need to prove anyone wrong. It was born from necessity. From the simple fact that I needed to survive and couldn't find anyone willing to hire me for the kind of work I thought I wanted to do. After college, with my chemistry degree and my student loans, I discovered that the job market wasn't exactly welcoming to someone with my background and my lack of connections. I remember those first months after graduation, sending out resume after resume, going to interview after interview, only to be told I wasn't quite the right fit. The rejection letters piled up on my desk like autumn leaves, each one a small death of hope. I started working at a corporate coffee chain just to pay rent, telling myself it was temporary, that something better would come along. But something interesting happened during those months of slinging lattes and cleaning espresso machines. I started to notice things. The way different beans responded to different roasting techniques, the chemistry behind extraction times and water temperatures, the business side of things too, how much markup there was on each cup, how customer loyalty could be built through consistency and quality. I began experimenting at home, roasting small batches of green beans in my oven, trying to understand the Maillard reaction that creates the complex flavors in coffee. I started a blog about coffee science, writing detailed posts about the chemical processes that transform bitter green seeds into the aromatic brown beans we know and love. The blog gained a small but devoted following, and I began to realize that maybe I had found my calling after all. The food truck came about almost by accident. I was complaining to my neighbor about how expensive good coffee was, and how most places didn't really understand the science behind what they were doing. She suggested I start my own business, and while the idea seemed impossible at first, it began to take root in my mind. I spent months researching, learning about business licenses and health permits, studying successful coffee businesses, and trying to understand what made them work. I worked extra shifts at the corporate job, saved every penny I could, and finally scraped together enough money to buy a used food truck from a guy who was getting out of the mobile food business. Those first months were brutal. I was working alone, getting up at 4 in the morning to prep for the day, driving to different locations around the city, hoping to build a customer base. Some days I barely sold enough to cover the cost of gas. I remember one particularly bad week when I made less than $50 total, and I seriously considered giving up. But something kept me going. Maybe it was stubbornness, maybe it was the fear of admitting defeat, or maybe it was the handful of regular customers who started to appreciate what I was doing. There was Jennifer, the nurse who worked nights at the hospital, who would stop by every morning at 6:30 for a double shot of espresso and a few minutes of conversation. There was Carlos, the construction worker who introduced me to half his crew, turning them into regulars. There was Mrs. Kim, the elderly woman who would walk 6 blocks out of her way just to buy my coffee, because she said it reminded her of the cafe she used to frequent in Seoul. These people didn't know about my past failures or my chemistry degree or my complicated relationship with academic achievement. They just knew that I made good coffee and treated them with respect. They saw something in me that I was just beginning to see in myself, the possibility of success on my own terms. The transition from food truck to brick-and-mortar cafe happened gradually. I started getting requests for catering, then for regular deliveries to office buildings. I began roasting beans in larger quantities, selling them wholesale to other small businesses. The blog grew, and I started getting invited to speak at coffee industry events about the science of roasting and brewing. When the opportunity came to lease the space that would become Roasted Dreams, I almost talked myself out of it. The rent was more than I had ever imagined paying, and the renovations would eat up every penny of my savings. But I had built something by then, something more valuable than money. I had built confidence in my own abilities. The first year was still a struggle, learning to manage employees, dealing with equipment breakdowns, navigating the complexities of running a full-service cafe. But I had something I didn't have in high school, the knowledge that I could figure things out, that I could adapt and learn and overcome obstacles. I hired Marcus first, a recent college graduate who had been working at a corporate chain and was looking for something more meaningful. Then came Elena, a graphic designer who wanted to transition into the food service industry. Then David, a retired teacher who needed something to do with his time and turned out to have a natural gift for customer service. We became a team, and more than that, we became a family. We celebrated each other's successes and supported each other through difficulties. When Elena's mother got sick and she needed to take time off, we covered her shifts without question. When David's arthritis started acting up, we rearranged the workspace to make it easier for him to do his job. When Marcus decided to go back to school for his MBA, we adjusted his schedule to accommodate his classes. This is what Mrs. Henderson couldn't have predicted when she failed me all those years ago. She couldn't have foreseen that her lack of faith in me would eventually lead me to create something that was about more than just success or profit. She couldn't have imagined that the girl she dismissed would build something that provided not just excellent coffee, but also jobs for people who needed them, and a gathering place for a community that was hungry for connection. I think about this as I watch the afternoon rush build up. The cafe is full of regulars now, people who have made Roasted Dreams part of their daily routine. There's the book club that meets here every Tuesday, the freelance writers who camp out at the corner table with their laptops, the young mothers who bring their toddlers for the weekly music circle we host on Thursday mornings. This is my revenge, if you can call it that. Not just the financial success, though, that's certainly satisfying. Not just the recognition in the local business community. Though I won't lie and say the awards don't feel good. The real revenge is the life I've built, the relationships I've fostered, the sense of purpose I wake up with every morning. I remember the exact moment Mrs. Henderson told me I would never amount to anything. It was after I had failed her midterm exam. The one I now realize was designed to be impossible for someone without additional tutoring that I couldn't afford. She called me to her desk after class and spoke in that quiet, condescending tone that teachers use when they want to seem kind while delivering devastating news. "Sarah," she said, not looking up from her gradebook, "I think you need to seriously consider whether chemistry is the right path for you. You lack the analytical thinking skills necessary for success in the sciences. Have you thought about something more practical?" I was 17 years old, already struggling with the insecurities that come with being the child of immigrants who worked multiple jobs to make ends meet. I didn't have the confidence to argue with her, to point out that I had been teaching myself chemistry concepts from library books since I was 12. I didn't have the vocabulary to explain that her teaching methods didn't match my learning style, or that the constant atmosphere of judgment in her classroom made it impossible for me to think clearly. Instead, I nodded and mumbled something about looking into other options. I changed my schedule the next semester, dropping out of advanced placement courses and settling for classes that were easier but less challenging. I told myself I was being realistic, but really I was just accepting someone else's limitations as my own. The damage from that moment rippled through the rest of my high school experience and into college. Even though I eventually did study chemistry, I always carried a nagging doubt about my abilities. I second-guessed myself constantly, assumed that other students were naturally smarter than me, and worked twice as hard to prove that I belonged in classes where I actually excelled. It wasn't until I started the blog, until I began writing about the science of coffee with confidence and expertise, that I realized Mrs. Henderson had been wrong. Not just wrong about my potential, but wrong about what intelligence looked like and how it could be expressed. She had a narrow definition of success that didn't account for different types of thinking, different ways of approaching problems, different paths to understanding. The chemistry degree I earned wasn't just a piece of paper. It was proof that I could master complex concepts when given the right environment and support. But more than that, it was a foundation for understanding the world in ways that served me well beyond the classroom. Every day at Roasted Dreams, I used the analytical skills Mrs. Henderson claimed I lacked. I troubleshoot equipment problems, adjust roasting profiles based on bean characteristics, and create new flavor combinations using my understanding of how different compounds interact. But the real revelation came when I realized that success doesn't have to look like what other people expect. Mrs. Henderson probably envisioned successful students becoming research scientists or working for pharmaceutical companies. She couldn't have imagined that someone could use chemistry knowledge to build a thriving small business, or that entrepreneurship could be just as intellectually rigorous as traditional academic or corporate careers. This realization changed everything for me. It freed me from the need to prove myself according to someone else's standards and allowed me to define success on my own terms. Success, I discovered, wasn't about meeting external expectations or following predetermined paths. It was about finding work that utilized my strengths, contributed to my community, and provided a sense of fulfillment that went beyond financial compensation. The afternoon crowd is starting to thin out now, and I find myself thinking about the conversation I had with Mrs. Henderson this morning. Her apology surprised me. Not because I didn't think she was capable of recognizing her mistakes, but because I had assumed she wouldn't remember me at all. The fact that she did remember, that she carried some awareness of how her words might have affected me, suggests that the interaction was more significant for her than I had realized. This makes me wonder about the other students she taught, the ones who might have had similar experiences, but didn't have the support systems or the stubborn determination to overcome her lack of faith in them. How many potentially brilliant minds were redirected away from their passions because one person in authority decided they weren't good enough. The thought makes me angry, but it also makes me more determined to use my success as a platform for something larger. Over the past year, I've started a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs, particularly those from backgrounds similar to mine. I've partnered with the local community college to offer workshops on business planning and financial literacy. I've hired several employees who were struggling to find work elsewhere, giving them not just jobs, but also opportunities to develop new skills and advance their careers. This is part of my legacy now, the ripple effects of refusing to accept someone else's limitations. Every person I hire, every student I mentor, every customer who feels welcomed and valued in my cafe represents a small victory over the forces that try to tell people they're not good enough. Marcus approaches with the daily sales report, and I'm pleased to see that we've had another strong day. The numbers are good, but what matters more to me is the story behind the numbers. The regular customers who trust us with their morning routine, the special orders we fulfill for local businesses, the community events we host that bring people together in meaningful ways. "Boss," Marcus says, "there's someone here to see you. Says she's from the Portland Business Journal. Something about a feature story on successful woman entrepreneurs." I look up to see a young woman with a notebook and a camera. Probably not much older than I was when Mrs. Henderson told me I'd never amount to anything. She's waiting by the counter with an eager expression, and I can see the hunger in her eyes, the desire to tell stories that matter. "I'll be right there," I tell Marcus, then take a moment to collect my thoughts. This is another milestone, another marker of how far I've come. 5 years ago, I was struggling to pay rent and questioning every decision I'd made. Now I'm being interviewed as an example of entrepreneurial success. But as I walk toward the journalist, I realize that the real story isn't just about overcoming obstacles or proving doubters wrong. It's about the unexpected ways that setbacks can become strengths, how failures can redirect us toward paths we never would have considered otherwise. If Mrs. Henderson hadn't failed me, if she had encouraged my interest in chemistry instead of dismissing it, I might have followed a more traditional path. I might have become a research scientist or a pharmaceutical engineer, jobs that would have provided financial security but might not have offered the same sense of purpose and community that I've found as a business owner. This doesn't mean I'm grateful for the discrimination I faced, or that I think struggling is necessary for success. But it does mean that I've learned to see challenges as information rather than verdicts. Every obstacle has taught me something valuable. Every failure has revealed new possibilities. Every moment of doubt has eventually led to deeper confidence. As I sit down with the journalist and begin to tell my story, I find myself thinking about the girl I used to be, the one who believed that other people's opinions of her were more accurate than her own self-knowledge. I wish I could go back and tell her that the voice in her head was more trustworthy than the voices of authority figures who claimed to know her potential better than she did. But I can't go back, and maybe that's okay. Maybe the journey from doubt to confidence has to be traveled in real time, with all the uncertainty and struggle that entails. Maybe the victory is sweeter because it was earned through persistence, rather than granted through early recognition. The journalist asks me about my biggest challenges, and I tell her about the early days of the food truck, about the equipment breakdowns and the slow sales and the constant worry about whether I was making a terrible mistake. I tell her about the loneliness of working alone, about the physical exhaustion of 14-hour days, about the moments when I questioned whether I had what it took to succeed. But I also tell her about the first time a customer told me my coffee was the best they had ever had, about the day I realized I had enough regular customers to sustain the business, about the moment I signed the lease for the cafe space, and knew I was taking a leap that could change everything. What advice would you give to young entrepreneurs who are just starting out? She asks. I think about this for a moment, considering all the things I wish someone had told me when I was struggling to find my path. Trust your instincts, I finally say. Don't let other people's limited vision of what you can achieve define your own possibilities. And remember that success rarely looks like what you expect it to look like. The interview continues for another hour, covering everything from my business philosophy to my plans for expansion. As we talk, I find myself appreciating not just how far I've come, but how much I've learned about myself and about what really matters. When the journalist finally packs up her equipment and leaves, I take a few minutes to walk around the cafe, appreciating the space I've created. The exposed brick walls, the carefully curated artwork from local artists, the custom-built roasting equipment that allows me to maintain the quality that has become our signature. This is my laboratory now, my classroom, my stage for experimenting with ideas and sharing them with the world. The evening shift is taking over, and I know I should probably head home soon. But I linger, enjoying the comfortable bustle of the cafe as it transitions from afternoon productivity to evening relaxation. A couple is having what looks like a first date at the corner table, nervous and excited and completely absorbed in each other. A group of friends is catching up over specialty drinks, their laughter punctuating the gentle hum of conversation. This is what I've built. Not just a business, but a space where people can connect, where they can feel welcomed and valued, regardless of their background or their history. It's a place where someone like me, someone who was once told she would never amount to anything, can create something meaningful and lasting. As I finally prepare to leave, I think about Mrs. Henderson and our brief conversation this morning. I hope she finds peace with whatever regrets she carries about her teaching career. I hope she understands that while her words caused damage, they also inadvertently contributed to something positive. Sometimes the people who doubt us give us the greatest gift of all, the opportunity to prove them wrong by becoming exactly who we were meant to be. The sun is setting as I lock up the cafe, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that remind me of the perfect espresso crema. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new opportunities to grow and learn and serve my community. But tonight, I'm content to walk home through the city I've made my own, knowing that I've built something that will outlast any doubt or criticism. I am not the girl Mrs. Henderson failed all those years ago. I am not defined by her lack of vision or her narrow understanding of what success looks like. I am the woman who refused to accept someone else's limitations, who turned rejection into motivation, who built something beautiful from the ashes of shattered expectations. And tomorrow, when the first customers arrive for their morning coffee, I'll be here to serve them, not as someone who once needed to prove herself, but as someone who has learned that the only approval that really matters is the one we give ourselves.